Hello and welcome to the CANA Connection Podcast. On today's podcast, our host Rob Cranston will be talking with one of our fellow CANAers, Mr. Thomas Kline, Tommy Kline to the rest of the CANAers. He is a Principal Logistics IT Integrator, and today they'll be talking about all kinds of stuff. So Rob, without further ado, take it away.
Mr. Koa Beam, thank you very much. It's been a while, my friend.
It has been. We jump back into it.
I know. This is none better to do that with the great Tommy Kline, who's sitting over there in our window. Tommy, welcome. Yeah, brother. I got to tell you, he's coming up on 1 year, just shy 1 year at CANA.
Quick year.
I know. Things go by quick here. We got you in from being a retired Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Marine Corps, branch head at Marfor PAC, excuse me. That's the branch head aviation logistics operations. And it couldn't be, just an awesome year and many years ahead as we forge into some of the discovery today around discussion of innovation, collaboration, client impact, feedback. And boy, I tell you, let's start with you bringing us to kind of present wave tops of being a Tulane grad in all things, but which is pretty awesome. Bachelor's in Fine Arts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I was a computer science major until 9/11 happened, basically, and I decided to. All my notes are anyways. My whole family's full of artists, so it's a creative aspect to everything I do. But I'm multidisciplined, and I just wanted to get a degree in something that would be fun. So it was fun. I was in Tulane, New Orleans, doing metal sculpture, and that was a lot of fun.
Cool. So cool. And then what kind of moved you into that decision making around a military career? Was it that epic moment of like, I'm going to go fight wars?
No, I was recruited by the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy for basketball, and that generally got me interested. My dad said, "Oh, that's a great way to pay for school." And coming from meager Indiana beginnings, it's okay, that sounds good. Let's go talk to some people, and then the more you learn about the different options, the more it becomes appealing to you. For all the reasons in basketball, it was leadership, challenge, physical, like all of those things that would normally get an athlete. And it was a nice fit. So I met a high school recruiter in the high school with a pull-up bar and everything. And he said, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "Oh, it's okay, man. I'm going to go to the Naval Academy." And he says, "We're in the Navy. We're just the men's department." And it was the classic line. And he got me. So we talked, and the more I learned about the Marines, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's cool. I think it's an interesting journey that I think a lot of Marines take, that very kind of somewhat similar, but once there, then as commissioned and you became an aviation maintenance officer. Walk us through that up until you getting out. Just some highlights.
Yeah, aircraft maintenance was my 12th choice, but I'm a gearhead, so it made complete sense. I was always good with numbers. I was always good with mechanics and computers, and so that was perfect. I went to Beaufort for my first duty station, was in an F-18 squadron, assistant in that way. Very technical. I built an access database to control training and remind me when things were coming due. That was before we automated everything. And then I was the commo de facto, because we don't have a communications officer in a squadron. So I was ghosting or re-imaging machines, and I left the squadron right as the NMCI transition occurred. So that was perfect timing too. Then, of course, recruiting duty, alpha recruiting duty back to Okinawa, where I had a really great tour inside the 3MEF G4. So if you don't know, it's a ground logistics center, because the aircraft logistics, we don't have, we skip echelon for the MEF level. So I was in the G4 in the MAGTAF Deployment and Distribution Operations Center, which was really cool. It was me and 7 LDOs and chief warrant officers doing deployment and distribution around the Pacific Theater. So, and then from there to MPS Monterey for a Master's of IT, and then after that to the government accounting system for the Marine Corps, right as the Navy was coming onto Sabres, and it was a little bit of political football and a lot of challenge because the Navy's made up of 12 different accounting entities, and they all wanted the system to change fast. So it was a good experience, and then finished up, like you said, at Marport Pack, and now I'm here.
Well, the quote, which was so interesting but fascinating, of you taking and these pieces of digital innovation. There's two things that happened, I know, in your career that, and I know there was more, but really from tools that really came from your brainstorming and creativity in that digital frontier, and being able to create with a team something that really does have immediate impact value inside the organization. Talks through two things. The first being the aviation maintenance capacity model tool. And then second, a lot of our audience is going to know who Tommy Kline through a different channel, and that is the Ferry Dust Fighter, which AI-enabled logistics capability. First, let's start with the first one, with the capacity model, and then go into the Ferry Dust Fighter.
Yeah, great. So I came out of my last tour in the accounting system. I knew enough to be dangerous. I was in charge of some of the BI, the business intelligence systems. So I got familiar with Tableau and Cognos Analytics and Oracle. And when I got to the fleet, back to the fleet, Marport Pack, they were still doing everything in Excel, reporting readiness to the generals. And it was inefficient, error prone. And I knew that if I could automate that into a BI tool, then it would be much easier, and I would have more of my day to do some fun, innovative things. So I automated almost everything. I learned Power BI. And then same time, I got a contract proposal through First Mall for something called maintenance capacity model. And they wanted some pretty big money to do. The plan wasn't quite all there, and I didn't know how to help them get there. So in the meantime, it piqued my interest. So the idea of maintenance capacity model is, hey, you've got pilots that are hungry for qualifications, and they need to fly, and your planes are hungry for maintenance. The more you fly them, the more they break. And you have a finite resource of the maintenance department who is very specialized. And the idea is predicting with the number of staff you're going to have at work next week, and the average number of flight hours that you need to fly, and how many hours of maintenance the model would think you're going to need to do, are you going to be able to keep readiness up? And so I was able to prototype them before the contract ever went through. One that made them allowed, they basically chose not to pursue the contract anymore. And then it became an enterprise-wide system. DCI, the Deputy Commandant for Information, had a business case right at that time to decide whether or not to provide Power BI to the enterprise from a central place. And this was a perfect use case, because if you could do that, then I could build something that the entire enterprise could use. And I could pull all the data from my desk, and it would save a lot of people a lot of work, and they could just use the tool. So I did that in Power Platform. I built Power Apps, triggers, and Power Automate, and then hosted the whole thing in Microsoft Teams right as Teams came out. So that's the maintenance capacity model. And that was fortunate enough to be recognized as a finalist in the Innovation Challenge.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And of course, it wasn't my idea. Mike Malone is a wonderfully smart retired lieutenant colonel who now runs a depot for the Air Force F-16s. And Master Guns Travis Dusenberry was also his very much a technical person, and they were maintaining this whole thing in Excel. So it was just a lift and shift. Like, they had all the logic there. It was just, so we formed a great team. Mike called me and was like, "Are you taking my idea?" These guys don't want to give me data anymore. Like, I'm not getting anything from the squadrons because they said you're going with Tommy Kline. And I'm like, I'm just trying to save money. I'm not trying to take your idea. Let me show you how to do Power BI, and then you can take it. So I said, it's October right now. By January, I'm off the project. So that's what we did. I went to DC and worked with him outside the Pentagon, and I transitioned that project to him. And that gave me a lot of time to start doing Fairy Dust Fighter and other things like that. So Fairy Dust Fighter came along with the Mar4Pac G4, wanting to be able to visualize their operational reach. And I wanted to be able to do the same. It's like, hey, I saw this all the time in tabletop exercises and command post exercises where the operators think like they're war games. There's no way that you could move that much material in that short amount of time with these assets. Or if you could, there was no model that would show, all right, but how many round robins could those planes do with a crew rest as it is, or how fast can that ship really get there? That stuff is just not modeled in today's war games. So I thought, hey, I'm pretty good at Python, and I can. By the time, it was a happy coincidence too. National Security Innovation Network came out with X-Force, which is like a fellowship. So I got a couple of interns to help me jam on it, and we just spent a summer. I had done some of the navigation work for the ships and aircraft in a Python package, and then I could just show them the idea and just add features every week. So by the end of the summer internship, we had a pretty nice simulation, agent-based simulation, object-oriented, where it would take basically a time phase force deployment data and play it forward and show you where you're going to have issues, given your assumptions on consumption for various classes of supply.
So taking that, and this is beautiful. Thanks for that layout. And this gets into really, okay, now end of Mar4Pac tour and transition and kind of a one-up. We'll get back to the integrate, especially the automation and really the digital kind of frontier here and some of the stuff. I know you're forging ahead at CANA and beyond, but for a lot of us and to understand, and a lot of social media has a tremendous amount of skill bridge programs and other transitions into the commercial workforce. In your perspective, as you transition, give a couple of tips on, for those out there that are, they're either they're looking for something, or that, hey, here's no joke. Here's what you got to kind of figure out before you actually jump into a skill bridge program or into the commercial space.
Yeah, there's a lot more restrictions on officers going into skill bridge now. There were some people upset that I bailed like I did on that. It's intended for skill transition, and I was already a pretty highly skilled person. But so I guess my advice would be, know you're going to do it beforehand. Like I had 22 months where my Appendix J was approved. I knew I was getting out, and then I was able to do informational interviews with contacts of contacts. I grew my LinkedIn community as much as I could, and those informational interviews were essential in me to pick CANA and CANA to pick me. I think I had a really good mentor at LinQuest. They do a lot of work in rockets in the Air Force space type of stuff, and he was like, look, all these things you're telling me, you need to go to the smallest company you can find, because you're not going to be happy just being a widget in a big machine. I can already tell. And that was great advice. CANA's fast pace. It's moving, and it's a lot of fun to be able to design the future, work with people that are very integrated and very passionate about what they're doing. It's not just managing a staff of people that are. I'm doing the actual work in a lot of cases, and that's fun too.
Those are great insights, and I tell you, when you look at the path that we've got at CANA as we build and stay on the silver lining of different adoptions of what are sexy technologies, but also really impactful ones that really are emerging, and a lot of folks are, quite frankly, are they don't necessarily know how to adopt or employ that into an operation at a tactical level, all the way up to the operational level. So with that, getting into innovation, one of the buckets of questions we've got, and as this kind of this open focus of generative AI, what we know is in the market, large language models applications. How do you? I mean, there's so much saturation, and you and I and Jess Kemp and Terry Hagan and Connie McKissack and others within CANA and a lot of others I'm following out have had, and Chris Sicci, we've got this kind of next phase of where we think we can get ourselves into a position where we're going to help our clients out with application of some methods and techniques and LLMs. But talk us through that. I mean, what is constantly evolving? So how do you stay with that evolution?
That is
right?
a question that everyone is asking across everywhere. So I'll just take it back a step to Veritas Fighter. You mentioned it was AI enabled, and it was agent based, but the agents were fairly stupid. So I've been learning as fast as I can since I got out. And so in the military, you get given the tools you have, and that's basically the only thing you can learn. I mean, you can learn more, but it's a struggle. But when you get out, you can study anything you want. So I immediately have been studying large language models, neural networks. I got into that a little bit with some projects that I didn't mention, but doing natural language processing and predictive analytics in that, basically building bots. So, and I just learned from these interns and students that I work with, because they're getting the top of the line education right now. And the AI market right now is a fast moving river, and we only have 10 fingers and 10 toes. You can only put it into so much. Like there's a maximum limit to what you can learn. So choosing that is something that I haven't figured out. I'm struggling with it all the time, but I have a natural curiosity and an enduring optimism that I can figure out what needs to go in my head.
Yeah, but what's interesting is, and this goes back to even the days within, years ago in CANA, where we were doing more on the policy side of like how does the adaptation and this is what's funny. It kind of drives me nuts as I go around some of these conferences and other places that have, once again, this, lipstick on a pig that has AI that we do, or something in that, that substitution of what we are as a differentiator. Well, AI is it. And it's kind of like, our organization, a lot of and to you, Tommy, you're great. You've been around it for a long time. So it's like, okay, got it. But like, the next phase of this really is formalizing a way that an operation can adapt to the speed and quickness, human in the loop. Because again, the hallucination component fears the heck out of a lot of C-level folks. Like, oh my God, I'm going to make decisions based off stuff that perhaps gets out of whack, if you will. But that being said, do you, as you see our clients at CANA and outside kind of the market, do you see that same kind of, not just hysteria, but also kind of unknown in terms of how to employ an AI strategy?
Yes.
And like, how do you convince them, yeah, this is like the way, like it truly is and could be the way?
Well, it's, you always have to play with the team on the field. And the team on the field, there are misunderstandings about what it is and what it can do. I always am harking back to, all right, this is not, you can't look at AI as another general officer that's going to make a decision for you. That's think about augmenting your sergeants and corporals, that give it small tasks. And of course, the field of tying its results to data that you already have. So do not hallucinate, just pull the data from here, retrieval augmented generation, knowledge graphs, vector databases, although into pooling, it's such a crazy field right now, but you can give it inferences as a task. You can give it, entity extraction, but you can't go, all right, just tell me what to do. It's not like that. It's like asking a 4-year corporal what to do for a military operation. It's ill suited to those tasks right now. And of course, I use it every day in programming, and in, Copilot, ChatGPT, all those things. The statistic is that a developer uses it 27% of the time. Whatever it tells you, whatever it gives you, you're only going to use it about once out of every 4 times it gives you a suggestion. And why is that? Because no matter what it can do right now, it is predicting the next word mathematically. It doesn't actually have the true context. Nothing in what it does can replace a human at this point.
Yeah, and let me throw it over to Koa, because both you guys, and this really gets in the artistic part of AI too, is that the ability for a AI tool to interpret your artistry, right? Like, and again, that's another space where it could be a threat. I've seen a lot of products that have used an AI tool to show, to do its graphics. What do you see as kind of the merging space in that, and perhaps maybe some of the threat to that?
Tommy, you want to go first?
No, yeah. But we can hear you, right? You're still on? Okay,
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm on. So, wow. So there's, beyond the legal ramifications in the art and generation stuff of everything, because every company is taking their stab at the way to do it for the image generation stuff, and they're avoiding something. The largest graphics platform there is professionally on the planet is Adobe, right? They're the leaders in Adobe for graphic software and everything like that. But a lot of what people use Adobe for can be done through other applications now and everything. But they have integrated their Firefly AI model into Photoshop, and just as a standalone thing that anybody can actually go use. You don't have to be a cloud Adobe Creative Cloud person to use. I think anybody can go try out Firefly, but it's really it's taken, the lawyers got to it, right? When Adobe was coming up with their Firefly thing, they were like, okay, if anybody puts any brand name or any name that's copyrighted or trademarked or anything like that into the image generation thing, case in point, I was doing a headshot for one of our people coming on here recently, and it was only from here up, and I needed the rest of his torso, so I had it generate the rest of the torso for me, which worked out fine, but the zipper was all jacked up. Mm-hmm. So I told it to replace the zipper with a YKK zipper, and it was like, no, I will not do that. So, because it's like YKK is a trademark type of zipper, so I was just like, just give me a black zipper, and it puts a black zipper on there, fine. So it's like, but another AI art generation thing would have done it. Like, if I would have typed it, Adobe's will kick back, no, you'll have to reword this, or you're violating our protocols by even asking for it like that. Other AI ones, just because of the way they've been trained, because they're getting a lot more input, will go, okay, I can't do a YKK zipper, but I know what you're asking for. But all that art stuff, beyond the legal ramifications, and this goes into the training stuff that Tommy was talking about, you need to train for your subset of what you're doing. So say if I do a lot of design, and there's a billion different AI art generation things out there, but some of them ain't so good at design, and some are really good at portraits, or some are very good at that, because that's what the more users that use it for that just recycles into its training data. So you need to know how to cycle out stuff that you don't want. And I don't know how it works for a lot of large language models for programming and everything like that. But I assume they use a similar thing. So in the AI art generation stuff, we have what's called LoRa's, and LoRa's stand for low rank adaptation. And that's, you plug that into your AI, and it says, focus on this stuff. And I would assume if you're like for the Marine Corps or any other kind of armed services, if you were tasking it with a task, it would take that large language model, which probably has a lot of information it doesn't need. And then you would need to have its own LoRa for it to be like, okay, think like this, in art terms, I'm saying paint like this. I want you to use an oil paint aesthetic and everything like that, and only reference oil paint stuff. Don't reference any watercolors or any of this other stuff. And then again, that gets into the copyright and legal and everything like that. But so that tailoring of the large language models is the key to getting the effective efficiency out of what you need. And then there's the whole how do you write your prompt? And again, for art stuff, it's there's a nuance to it. And the people who are really good at it can say do this, do this, do this. But because the models are getting updated and changed so often, they're trying to not dumb it down, but make it easier for your average person to write a prompt and get what they want. That the people who know how to nuance the prompt will get better results from it. And I can assume that will be similar for programming and everything.
That's why they call it prompt engineering. Yeah, because it's becoming a big field. And they're trying to automate that part too. The actual prompt engineering, they're making LLMs that can do that for you, which is, it's crazy. But yeah, so it's amazing how few of extra parameters that you need to train, QLoRa, LoRa, performance or parameter efficient fine tuning, PEF, all of those things are techniques to train. The three things that are struggles, and I don't know what Koa just said brought it into my head, is the three things that normal large language chat-based ones struggle with is staleness. It will not know after its training date what occurred. It also hallucination, which is a known problem. And then the third one is bias. And bias is a huge one inside of art-based as well. Mostly art-based, but there's compensating measures for that in large languages, and that's why the RAG business, the retrieval augmented generation vector databases, those are huge right now, because you can just add data and say pull from this. You've overcome the staleness then. And then there's a big market in just keeping the corpus of its training.
Yeah.
So that you can you document the provenance of how did this model become this way, to overcome those biases as well. So it's a burgeoning field that is going to continue.
You fact checked in one sense and also be accurate in another. In art, it's more nebulous, right? Because you got leeway for some things and stuff like that. But when you're programming or you're looking at to help you spew data through a filter of some kind or like that, eventually, depending on if it's like the old saying of anything, just like bad data in, junk, bad data out, you junk in, junk out. So if it gets too much of the wrong, information, I'm sure anybody who's played with art AI generation or language, having it help you write something, if you have it keep iterating, there's a point where you're having it iterate on itself, where it just starts turning, it turns the corner and you're like, what are you talking about now? And art-wise will be the same thing. You'll have it iterating on a piece of, I need better Roman pillars on the side here. And then eventually you end up with Egyptian obelisks or whatever. I'm like, this, that's way off track, but it will take what you're asking it to iterate on and eventually go off the rails.
Well, and let's pull that real quick, because I think there's where I want to get, and I know we always do. These are awesome riffs, and the fact of the matter of what we're facing inside next phase of again LLMs that we want to perhaps mature inside again the markets is ethics. And really, okay, so where do you put the boundary of what is an ethical type of process of applying an AI inside your mode of operations? So Tommy, let me ask you for, and then go if you got any insights, by all means. Yeah, you can take.
Yeah, well, I think that that's a huge field of ethical study for detecting, identifying, and preventing bias, and then using it. I don't know how to answer that question. It is going to be used for good and bad by the actors that would do so anyways with whatever tools they have. So, is that what you're getting at? Like, how do you ensure ethical employment?
Well, I mean, like, are we bound by what becomes then the ethical SOP? And SOP is like, okay, well, man, how do you frame that for whether that's a federal client? I don't think the commercial market, quite frankly, has, and not that I've heard of, saying, yeah, I need to have an ethical framework before you start building in different types of models. So I think it's more in the application on the federal side of how ethics is going to, and I think it's the ethics of how security is treated inside that model.
We should definitely, we could mention the computer vision and then some of the autonomous systems that are coming out, because those are where the ethical implications are really going to first hit the road. You can see Russian UAVs running into Ukrainian bunkers and vice versa. Like, there's some things ethically that are going to come to the forefront. And it's not necessarily in the training; it's in the programming of what's going on. And computer vision too, huge field, a lot to think about.
Let's parking lot those two for a series, a next podcast.
Yeah,
all right.
I know I'm of two minds on certain things.
Well, I know we can bring it. But let me just ask the last question. I think this is important for our audience. And Tommy, this is when we bring in, as we continue to bring in, call it staff, junior staff, as they become part of the CANA ecosystem. What are some of the critical skills that they're going to have to continue to work to refine to be successful? And that's being as an analyst, working with data, and then as well as perhaps bringing in an AI into their toolbox.
I think most of our junior people are going to have some AI experience coming in. Optimism and appetite for learning are the two key ingredients. That it's not a skill that you're going to have to learn. The skill itself is learning. You're going to have to learn whatever it is. You're going to have to adapt. You're going to have to relate to people, understand your customer, understand the data. And a lot of that is learning every time. It is adding something to your toolkit right in time to perform the way that will set you apart from your peers. And that's at CANA, that's what we need. We need young people that are willing to learn and trust themselves to be able to learn in time. And it's challenging, but I think that's the key to success in a lot of different roles for young people coming up.
That's awesome. I love it. That is fantastic. That is such a great set of points. For next time, we're going to get into sailboats, autonomous sailboats. We're going to get into, the world of other types of autonomous systems. Tommy, this is wonderful. Thanks for joining us, and let folks know. I know how to get a hold of you, but let our audience know how to get a hold of you and your social media handles.
Yeah. So on LinkedIn, it's just LinkedIn/Thomas-Kline, Kline. And then if you wanted to, you can find me on Thingiverse as a 3D modeler under the handle Tommy Barbecue, TOMMYBBQ. And also the same on Instagram is TOMMYBBQ. Not that I'm a great cook, but I'm barbecuing up some cool ideas. So
I need to know what's your most popular model on Thingiverse?
So I always build things that are very useful to me. So for my motorcycle, I built a series of cell phone holders that have a visor over it, and they clip on with a RAM. So I can use my heads-up navigation on my bike during
That's brilliant. I'm on Thingiverse a lot for certain things. So
cool.
I don't have a Thingiverse myself. I don't post any of my models because they're all D&D characters. So I don't think anybody.
Those are super popular.
I know, but I don't want anybody else to have them. So
yeah, well, there you go. No, I have a 3D printer right here. I'm due for an upgrade, to be honest. And 3D modeling, that's one thing. You never live up to your own expectations. I've been learning all this stuff about LLMs, transformers, fine-tuning, all these things. But I wanted to learn Blender because I really need to 3D model some better stuff. I learned some legacy things, and
we can talk Blender. We can talk Blender in our CANA chat thread and every stuff like that.
There you go.
Well, Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Tommy. And thank you, audience, for joining us on this episode of the CANA Connection podcast. If you would like more information about the CANA Connection or CANA LLC, hit up our website at canallc.com. This is Koa Beam signing off for Rob Cranston, Tommy Kline, and the rest of the CANA Connection podcast crew saying analyze, assess, and execute. And we'll catch you next time.
Bam!